Couple that notices white light following them go cold when they realize what it actually is. Betty and Barney Hill were a happy couple who believed a little hard work could go a long way. Pragmatic through and through, they shocked their friends and relatives when, in 1961, the couple started talking up a mythical white light that had been following them around on a long drive. Skeptics called them crazy, but the Hills were determined to share their strange encounter with anyone that would listen. As members of the NAACP in the 1960s, the Hills were community leaders. Meanwhile, Barney worked at the post office, while Betty handled state child welfare cases. So, when they penciled in a 3-day weekend on the calendar, the couple rushed out of their home in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, for a romantic getaway they didn't know would end as a nightmare. After years of marriage without a honeymoon, the Hills wanted to finally celebrate with a trip. With only 3 days to relax, they drove 8 hours to Niagara Falls and split their time between the powerful falls and Montreal. On September 18th, they started the long drive home. The drive changed their life. On the drive home, the couple enjoyed a cup of coffee together in a quiet Vermont diner, but quickly changed their course. A storm was bound for the area, so they decided to hurry home to beat the rain. They tore down the dark highway into rural New Hampshire and saw something strange. When Betty and Barney retold their story later, they said at 10:30 p.m. or so, they noticed a light shining down on them from up above. Barney, having fought in World War II, was sure it was just a satellite or an eastbound plane. As the light drew in closer and closer, however, Betty wasn't convinced that it was even from this planet. Concerns rose when the light continued to follow them, even after they turned down the winding mountain road. The chase appeared to be endless, so curiosity got the best of the Hills, and they pulled over at a rest stop to better see what was happening in the night sky. It would be their last moment as a normal couple on Earth. No one knows what really happened next, but the way the Hills told the story. They grabbed some binoculars, which they'd brought for sightseeing on their 3-day vacation, and stared up at the blinding light. If only someone had told them to keep driving. From the parked car, Betty took a closer look at the light in the sky, saying in shock to her husband, "If you think that's a satellite or a star, you're being completely ridiculous." She described the object in the sky as an object spinning in the air. Barney believed his wife, so he, too, stepped out of the car for a closer look. Barney took out a handgun before leaving his wife behind in the car. The light was hovering over them at this point, and when Barney stepped out, he was left in complete shock. In his recollection, he adds that at the moment, all he was thinking was, "My God, what is this thing?" Up above them was what they described as big as a jet, but as round and flat as a pancake. With his binoculars in hand, Barney saw the flying machine's inhabitants staring down at him. He said they were gray in color and didn't look like any creature he'd seen before. His first instinct was to lift his pistol, but he couldn't move. When the shock wore off and he could move again, Barney ran to start the car back up. He and Betty tore down the highway before suddenly getting very tired and falling asleep. About 2 hours later, and 35 miles down the road, they awoke, feeling like something was wrong, especially with their bodies. Betty and Barney couldn't remember anything. At home, neither of them were the same. Betty browsed the library and came across the civilian UFO group National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena. Upon realizing she might have seen a UFO that night, she reported the story to the Air Force. The Hills tried to move on with life. In the following days, Betty suffered from nightmares about the mysterious incident, while Barney battled an ulcer and anxiety. They sought help from a professional, which led them to Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist and neurologist who specialized in hypnosis, a popular mental health treatment at the time. The couple didn't know what really happened that night, but they knew how different their bodies felt. It could have been immense trauma that caused them to forget everything. But after months of working with Dr. Simon, they came to the conclusion that their encounter had indeed been an alien abduction. Soon, they pieced together more details of their tale. The gray aliens rendered the couple unconscious and brought them onto their spacecraft for examination. The Hills' clothes were taken off, strands of hair were plucked from their skin, clippings of their nails and scraps of skin were taken for study. Traumatized, the couple wanted their story known far and wide. Back then, UFO sightings weren't uncommon. And as Betty found, there were groups just for supporting folks who'd been through extraterrestrial encounters. The Hills were surprised to find that many across the country believed or claimed to have faced an alien in the flesh. Of course, the Hills story faced scrutiny, but Barney's family was particularly intrigued. Barney's niece, Kathleen Martin, knew her uncle well enough to realize something was off. Along with the Hills' therapist, she believed that they shared their too crazy to be true story in earnest. She even wrote a book on their ordeal entitled Captured: The Betty and Barney Hill Experience. That wouldn't be their last encounter with fame. About 4 years after the mysterious ordeal, in 1965, the Hills' tale of alien abduction was blasted across the columns of a Boston newspaper. Doctors and sci-fi fanatics alike were talking all about the story as well. And eventually the whole country would see the starry skies in another light with another book and production. In 1966, novelist John Fuller wrote a best-selling book all about Betty and Barney's out-of-this-world story. They were given even more star treatment in 1975 when James Earl Jones played Barney in the television film The UFO Incident. Another telling of the Hills' alien abduction tale. In spite of the trauma they endured, Betty and Barney learned to rise above it. After it all, Betty proclaimed she was repeatedly visited by her alien abductors throughout the decades. And she remained a voice in UFO research. She did so without the aid of Barney, who 8 years after the incident passed away at 46 from a cerebral hemorrhage. Betty continued studying UFOs and listening to stories. Because of Betty and Barney, we've all wondered about life on other planets. In the last 2 decades, one extraordinary kid from Russia has made claims of extraterrestrial life that have scientists completely perplexed. While many people sensibly doubt the tale he's been spreading for over 22 years, others admit his claims contain uncanny details about life on Mars. Just 2 weeks after Boris Kiprianovich was born, he held his head up without support. From that incredible moment forward, his parents knew he was special. And as he grew, Boris only continued to impress. Weeks after his 1996 birthday, for instance, the Russian native started speaking, and at 1.5 years old, Boris could read and draw. He earned early admittance into kindergarten at age 2 where he amazed teachers. Strangely, though, Boris intimately knew the universe despite having never been taught about space. He knew planets, stars, and constellations. Expert analysis dubbed Boris a child genius, which made a claim he made at age 7 even stranger. At age 7, Boris spent a weekend camping with his parents and their friends. Wearing a t-shirt and baseball cap, the adolescent asked the adults to quiet down. He had a story to tell. While some adults ignored the boy at first, eventually, the campsites grew quiet. Boris had everyone's attention. He told everyone he was from Mars and he'd come to save the world. More precisely, Boris asserted that, in a previous life, he lived on Mars. Now, he was reborn on Earth along with others who called themselves Indigo Children. This might give you pause, but remember, Boris knew space at a level that baffled experts. As a child, and in his teens, Boris reaffirmed most of what he said at the campfire. In an interview, his story around the fire continued. According to Boris, Mars residents stop aging at 35. They're also tall, he noted, and have killer technology that led to interstellar travel, which he recalled fondly. I remember that time when I was 14 or 15 years old, Boris said of his previous life. The Martians were waging wars, so I would often have to participate in air raids with a friend of mine. We could travel in time and space flying in round spaceships, but we would observe life on Earth on triangular aircraft. Martian spaceships are very complicated. They are layered, and they can fly all across the universe. But these advances led to destruction. Because of those advanced technologies, Martians wiped themselves out in a nuclear conflict years ago. From there, he delivered his warning. His people, as he referred to those who survived the catastrophes on Mars, saw similarities between attitudes on current Earth and Mars prior to destruction. In other words, in a world of power-hungry oligarchs and trigger-happy dictators, Earth faced a fate similar to those in Boris's alleged homeland. But the boy offered some good news to humans, too. The human life will change when the Sphinx is opened, Boris said. It has an opening mechanism somewhere behind the ear. He admitted, however, he didn't know the specifics. Thanks a lot, Boris. Boris also alleged the pyramids of Giza hold secrets beyond our wildest dreams. But surely, though, these are just the ramblings of a kid who read some science fiction at an impressionable age, right? In 2017, a decade and a half after Boris's campfire story, experts made a startling discovery about the Great Pyramid of Giza using proprietary technology. Using cosmic ray-based imaging, scientists discovered a 100-feet-long void in the heart of the pyramid, just above the Grand Gallery. Below, no one could say for sure what was in the void. If you asked Boris about the void, however, he might have a creative answer to offer. Who knows? Maybe it's holding a spaceship capable of intergalactic travel. Over the years, Boris participated in plenty of interviews, and while plenty of people are still skeptical, others can't help but be drawn in by his story. Scientists have been working for years to actually get humans to Mars, and with recent technological advances, this mission is now very much a reality. Today, Betty and Barney Hill's tombstones both read The Interrupted Journey, a reference to the famed Fuller novel inspired by their alien encounter. Although they were not the first to claim that aliens exist, they were the ones who put the belief on the map. And the stars have never been the same since.